Hey, this is David Hayter. You may know me as the screenwriter of films like X-Men, X-Men 2, and Watchmen, but you probably know me best as the voice of Solid Snake from Metal Gear Solid. And you're listening to Hawaii's #1 podcast, the Kasanova Podcast. Kept you waiting, huh?
What's up, guys? This is Mikhail Kasanova, Hawaii content creator, and I'm here to share some amazing news. Hawaii's #1 podcast, the Kasanova Podcast, is officially partnered, powered, and exclusively on Melon. Now, if you're looking to get started with not only a podcast, or if you're looking to do recording, both video and audio, if you're looking to have your own custom overlays, or if you want to start streaming, or you don't know where to start streaming or how to start streaming, and you just want to use your browser, whether it be on your phone or on your computer, hey, you can even use it on a Chromebook, then I'm going to tell you where to get started. Go over to Melon, use the link down below, and you can get started streaming in just 5 easy clicks. Super simple, everything you need with recording, broadcasting, and so much more. And it's so simple to set up and use, and I'm excited for you to try it out for yourself using my link down below, and you can see the difference for yourself. Get started today with Melon. All right, and welcome everyone to another episode of Hawaii's #1 podcast, the Kasanova Podcast. I'm your host, Mikhail Kasanova. I've got the true honor of having a very good friend of mine on the show, the one, the only, the highly opinionated, controversial, not really, he's not really controversial, he's super dope, the one and only Avalanche Reviews. Jared, how you doing?
What's up, man? I say highly opinionated was spot on.
Oh man, it's been a year since we last did a podcast. We've done two, actually. We did one where I interviewed you beginning of last year, and then we did one with a couple other people, one person who apparently hates me. But anyway, that's not
that's right. You know, I remember that podcast, right?
But aside from that, man, like how's everything been going? I know you've been in a music video, you've been cranking out the videos.
Yeah. I've been in a music video, I've been in a song. I had my vocals recorded for the first time in like a decade, probably, maybe more, maybe like 12 years. But my friend has a band called Pieced Up. Very good band, Pieced Up, super good stuff. But I was in one of their music videos because I was just in the neighborhood when they were recording it, and they're like, "Yeah, come over and hang out." And they needed a guy to be a bartender. And I guess in my mind, acting is putting on a New York accent, because they're just like, just stop doing the New York accent. And I'm like, "Yeah, what do you have there?" Like, I couldn't stop doing it. But they had a song or album they were recording, and I used to sing in a death metal band in like the South Florida area, and we kind of went all over the place. So he's like, "Yeah, we got to have you on." I did a part in a song, and I was pretty stoked at how it turned out. It was actually cool.
Dude, I definitely got to leave a link to that. I actually showcase this in the podcast, since I can go and this platform lets me add things in. So I'll go back
cool.
and
absolutely,
yeah, dude, this platform is freaking sick. I'll tell you about it, and I'll be very open about it. Like, I was on what was the platform before? StreamYard. I was using them for the first people to use it. Got a lot of people to use it, and then they like, "Hey, you want to be a partner?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And then I got nothing with them. Still paying $50 a month to use their damn platform. And then Melon hit me up. They're like, "Hey, we'd like to partner you, give you free access, pay you monthly, give you affiliate links." And I'm like,
damn,
all right, we'll do
that's
that.
pretty cool. And as far as quality goes, I mean, this is better than like Skype or Discord call quality. Your mic sounds great. So
yeah, dude, I was really concerned about that. I was like, am I gonna be able to utilize my XLR, run it through, because this XLR interface I use, the live streamer Nexus from AVerMedia, it's good, but it's got some quirks, and I've run into issues with this with like TeamSpeak, and run into issues with it with this other one, Skype, and
Mm.
that one that everyone's on. Fuck, I can't think of the name. Zoom. That's the damn thing.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I was running into issues with it on that, and then it's just you know, with this platform it works. So it's like, oh, cool. Well,
I'm pretty
oh yeah,
lucky.
they're
Oh, go ahead.
sponsoring this video. Thank you,
Oh,
Melon.
really? Hell yeah.
So, um, yeah, I'm happy about it, man. But dude, vocals appearing, and you've been shredding it up too. You've been back in even well, you're always working out. It's never a day you're not working out,
Mhm.
but you've been shredding it up on the skateboard too.
Oh,
So
yes. Yes, that's another thing, first time in about a decade. I used to be heavy into skating, probably from when I was about 14 till I was about 20 something, but I was not as good as you would assume for being doing that for that long, but
mhm.
n now that I'm coming back to it, there was a grace period or like a month where I was furious because I was skating so bad, I couldn't do anything I used to. It's starting to come back to me slowly but surely, though.
So are you gonna? Because I know you're, and we can talk about this further along the line. But I know you're moving. But are you gonna be able to skateboard there? Like, are there
That's
skateboards,
that's
skate
the
parks?
thing. That's of everything we're doing and we've had planned for, that's the one thing that's, just a core negative. We're planning on moving to Japan, and in a Japanese neighborhood, they would not be a fan of me constantly ollieing and kick flipping, slamming my deck down on the concrete in the middle of the street. I assume, you gotta meet your neighbors first and stuff, and we don't even know where we're gonna live, if it's gonna be further over the Edogawa where prices are a little cheaper and it's a
Mhm.
little more rural or it's like packed in city type situation. So we'll have to see, but it's looking like anytime we want to get some skating in, we're going to have to go to a skate park, which sucks. I'm not a park guy. I'm flat ground. I don't do anything. Benches, 3 sets. I don't mess around with like kickers or bowls or quarter pipes. It's just a flat ground Miami skater. I don't like messing around with parks too much.
Well, since you're gonna be going to Japan, you'll be close here to Hawaii, so you're gonna have to come here at some point, my
That'd be
guy.
dope. No, my wife is steady. She wants to travel, and my only thing that I, say no to about is like, when we're traveling, I just wanna go to Japan, but if we're already in Japan, sky's the limit. We could go anywhere, right?
Well, yeah. If when you come out here to Hawaii, you got a place to stay.
Yeah, we'll
I
do
think
it
I
up,
told you
man.
that
Hell
last
yeah.
time.
Go get some skating in over there too. Let's do it.
Yeah, dude, I'm down the street from like several skate parks.
Yeah, man,
It's
that'd be fun as hell. I'm super down for that. We're gonna try like what we're calling the best friend tour before we leave the
mhm.
states, and we're just gonna go visit everyone we know all over, like Miami, Colorado, California, everywhere.
Dang, do it, do it. Are you nervous? Excited? Both?
Oh yeah, I stay in constant motion for some reason. Like if I'm sitting still, I'm tapping my toes. I have this weird thing. I have to keep beat at all times. So if I'm sitting here, you'll see my fingers, and I'll be trying to keep beat the entire time, and if I can't think and talk at the same time while I'm keeping beat, it fucks me up. I don't know why.
No, I know how that is. But dude, so I know with your channel, I've been watching a lot. Like I'm constantly watching your content.
Thank you.
Um, you know, you went through a whole series of Resident Evil clones, and then
Yeah,
you've gone through all of the onimusha games. Like, what's next? And
very good
how was the
question.
experience? Like,
It's super, super fun, especially with I mean, because the Onimusha series I was already mostly familiar with, so it's
mhm.
pretty easy to jump back into that stuff and then write down some thoughts because 'cause I've had, 15 years to think about how I feel about the series. With, the RE clones, though, it was all brand new stuff. A lot of these games were games people had recommended or games I'd wanted to try, like, Curse: Eye of the Isis, I think, on the original Xbox and PC, stuff like that.
Yeah.
that I'd heard about forever, but you just never get around to trying. And projects like this sort of push you out of your comfort zone and force you to get into that position where you can actually play the games you've been meaning to for like a decade.
Do you find yourself I kind of know the answer to this, but I'm gonna ask you anyway. But do you find yourself enjoying like going back and playing retro games more than modern stuff?
Oh
I
yeah,
know I
for
do.
sure. Yeah.
Like I just feel like modern stuff just doesn't have the soul that games from the 90s, or 80s, 90s, and early 2000s does.
I think well, there's a couple answers to that though. I mean, for sure, I'm on board with the whole retro over modern thing, but I think you do have to admit that a portion of it comes from like bias. You grew up in that era and you played games like that when you were forming your brain and going through puberty and stuff. So you're gonna gravitate towards those things for sure. But on top of that, I think there's more objective metrics like experimentation. That used to be something that could happen in the AAA gaming space where you would have something like Ape Escape come out on the PS1, which is like a pretty big title on a major platform that played like nothing. Anyone like analog stick to do attacks. Like that was the first time that existed as far as, core console gaming went. Stuff like that couldn't happen today. In the indie market, sure, but the problem is, and it sucks to say, there's an equilibrium that you reach where if you have this much talent but this much budget, you're not going to be able to achieve the thing in between. The budget and talent have to sort of equal each other out. Uh, Otherwise, you may end up not being able to achieve the ideas you have in your head. Whereas at the time, there was this really cool balance of developers who wanted to experiment and do new things and interesting things. And the technology being just good enough to where those things could maybe take place in 3D on the PlayStation 1 and 64 in that era. And on top of that, game development was, or I'm sorry, game sales were very good. Like the gaming was popular. It wasn't at its peak, but it was an equilibrium between popularity and the cost of development. How it is nowadays, the cost of development has skyrocketed because so many people are playing games that they all have to be, the Avengers Endgame of video games, the most expensive, big budget, flashy, crazy thing ever, because you can't just have an audience. You have to have every audience now. Whereas back then, you could release Final Fantasy VII, spend millions and millions and millions, tens of millions of dollars on advertising alone on a niche genre. They're role playing games.
Mhm.
Like imagine that nowadays. Even Persona 5, which is the most popular RPG, JRPG I can remember in a long time. I mean, we're not even in modern day standards entering the amount of time and effort and money put into Final Fantasy VII. That's crazy to
Yeah.
me. That's why retro games are so cool, is because when you turn on a retro game, you're experiencing someone who wanted to make that video game specifically because they thought it would be a good idea and not so much because they knew it was going to make them a lot of money. I think that's where the soul you're talking about probably comes from.
Yeah. And I feel like now, um, well, yeah, especially now with the everyone has to be a winner, everyone has to be included
Mm,
mentality in gaming. Uh, we always have to have an easy mode, you
yeah.
know. Like I'm for accessibility,
Mhm.
but when it comes at the compromise of the creator's vision,
Yeah.
that's where I'm kind of like, you got to draw the line somewhere. And it's just when I talk to people in the gaming industry, it's almost like talking to an echo chamber because
Mm,
everyone's parroting the same talking points, and it's like, okay,
yeah.
but when one of the things, like I said to one person, I pissed them off really badly. I was like, okay, so when did you start gaming? They're like, oh, I started with the 360. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not surprised.
Right. Right.
And they're like, what is that supposed to mean? I'm like, your perception of gaming is based off of the era when it became mainstream. Like you're not expecting gaming to be the way it
Mhm.
was prior to it being mainstream, when it was niche, when there was a level of passion that's just not there.
Yeah.
And we could say that about you know the advent of gaming becoming mainstream has allowed, let's be honest, it's brought a lot of casual people in. It's brought
Yeah.
in a lot of people that would never even think about video games. Like, I mean, when you and I were growing up, being a gamer meant you got your ass beat, or
Hmm.
you know, you got picked on. If you
Yeah.
like comics, you liked anime, you like cartoons, like it was unpopular time to like all that stuff. But now it's part of culture, and like, you know, everyone wants to be in it. And a lot of these casuals, yeah, you know, maybe I'm being a little elitist here, but a
Mm.
lot of casuals, I just feel like, have this attitude of they know everything, like they're the experts and they've got the right opinion. It's like, motherfucker, you just got into this industry. What are you talking about? Like, you just got
Yeah.
here. I put 30 years in this bitch. What are you talking about?
See, and it's interesting you bring up the casuals thing and feeling like you're being an elitist. And I think that there is a slippery slope where you can be that way, but there's a
Mhm.
difference between being an elitist and being negatively affected by someone, right? Like, going back to the skating thing, if you see someone skating on the side of the street and, they can't ollie, they're falling off their board, it would be elitist to walk up to them and, call them a poser and tell them they should stop skating. That would be messed up to do. But if you're
Yeah,
skating a line and somebody who doesn't know what they're doing skates in front of you and falls and, you break your arm, you're not being an elitist by being pissed at their lack of experience, right? Because it's affected you negatively. So
yeah,
that's something that's hard to put out in the public and have the context be understood, but I do think there is a difference, and, what you said is absolutely what's going on, and it's kind of the opinion that people you don't wanna be associated with typically have, like, "Oh, these filthy casuals." Realistically, though, that's kinda part and parcel with gaming growing, you know? It's bigger than the movie industry now, and as more people come in, me and you and people listening to this, our purchasing power is almost non-existent if we are not part of that core demographic, which is someone who buys the newest games because they're being released. That's it. It's not because, hey, I really like this game. It's like, hey, did you hear about that new game on PS5? No, I'll go get it right now, because it's that new game on the PS5. Um, we're outside of that, and we don't control the industry anymore. Our money doesn't particularly matter outside of the indie realm. But for example, this is my go-to argument. Capcom is never ever, I don't think, in for the rest of time, they'll never put out another survival horror style fixed camera, tank control driven, uh, pre-rendered backgrounds having game ever again. And it's because people like you and me who would probably purchase that game make up 0.001% of the market.
yeah,
It sucks, but on the other side, we do have the positives of gaming being huge. It's in everyone's living rooms now. Kids are no longer beat up in school. So we do have the balance of the good and the bad, but it does suck that that good came at the cost of us getting the things we like.
yeah. I mean, it's the especially like being on the side where, you know, reviewing games. I know you review games too, and I know you've
Mhm.
worked with companies just as I have. The rate at which games are being churned out compared to when we were growing up is radically different. Like, I
Mhm.
look at how, I think I said this in a podcast with Tony from Row, but you look at how games when we were growing up, they would come out. You didn't know if it was going to get a sequel.
Mhm.
You had that game, you played it for a couple years,
Yeah.
before something else came out, before a company decided to put out a sequel. But if you were a Nintendo fan, you want another Zelda on your platform, you weren't hitting that.
Mhm.
But, like, you would probably get a game maybe 2 or 3 times a year. Your birthday, Christmas,
Right, right.
or, I'm supposed to say politically correct, happy holidays, uh, or you get it on, like, if it was on sale and your parents decided to get it for your or relative or
Yeah,
friend or
random
whoever.
chance, yeah.
Yeah, like, you would get that and then you would enjoy it. But now it's like every week or every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, a new game's
Mhm.
coming out. They're, you know, excessively expensive at this point. Sony's trying to jack up the price of games to, like, or they actually have. Never mind, they have. They're at $79, I believe,
For physical
or
games.
for physical. Yeah.
Jesus
Um,
Christ, how do you justify that?
Yeah. And it's like the whole fiasco with was it Horizon Zero Dawn sequel, like before they're like, hey, if you buy the PlayStation 4 version, you get the free upgrade to
Mhm.
PlayStation 5 version. And then they went back on that. They're like, no, you gotta pay, I think, a $30 uh you had to buy it on PlayStation Network. It was supposed to be like $30 or something. And
Mhm.
then they got flamed heavily. And then they
Rightly
went
so, yeah.
and then they're like, okay, well, yeah, we did promise it before, so we'll go ahead and give it to you. And it's like
Mhm.
Sony's so anti-consumer. I wish people would realize that, but
Yeah.
it, the rate at which, getting back to my original point, I went on a ramble tangent. It's just that thing was so ridiculous, like $79.
Yeah.
Like we're getting back to when the N64 era, when things were just unregulated. Games were 79, 89, $100 or
Yeah.
more. Anyway, but the rate games are coming out now, and then this whole idea that within 2 weeks a game is irrelevant, it's on to the next thing. Like
Mhm.
uh what recently came out, Sonic Colors, and all the bullshit that surrounded that.
Oh, Jesus.
Within 2 weeks, that game is old news. Actually, within a week. Actually, now the game is old news. And the game just came out to the public now. But
Yeah.
to
The
the
only reason
media,
it's in the news is because some guy with an emulator got it to freak out, and people thought that was real hardware.
right? Right? Dude, I got flamed.
Amazing.
People flame me. They're like, "Oh, you got paid to do your review because you ignored all the bugs." I'm like, "What the fuck?" I reviewed that game on 3 different platforms
Yeah.
and only ran into 2 glitches that they patched out. And
Mhm.
then when it came out, like if you mentioned the Yuzu emulator, people were like, "Yeah, but Sega knew it had all these glitches." I'm like, "But if you're playing on a fucking emulator, emulators are known to have issues sometimes. They
Well, it's
don't
not only
perfect."
that, that's not a supported platform, and there's no
Yeah,
perfect I mean, there is perfect emulation, but it's at the hardware level, not software. Software level is always gonna be give or take. It's like, "Okay, well, we got it this accurate, but, we had to do this. We had to make it buggy," or whatever it is, and it's not going to be able to operate the same way that real hardware is going to if you have the software layer in
yeah,
between the input and the display. So, it's dumb to think that that's even remotely representative of actual gameplay. No developer bases their game stability on whether or not it works on PS4, PS5, Xbox, and whatever the emulator is for those platforms.
it's yeah, but like the rate at which games are just considered old. Like I saw, and this can lead into our topic about the games journalist because I know
Oh yeah.
I have a lot to say about that. But there's this game journalist that made a comment about demon not demon souls, um guilty gear strive.
Mhm.
Like someone, he was like, he put a post up and he said he's looking for new fighting games to play. And someone was like, "Oh, why don't you try out Guilty Gear Strive?" He said, "When did that come out?" And the person's like, "Oh, it came out a couple months ago." He's like, "Oh, that game's old already."
Really?
So there's this mentality, and I see it with a lot of games journalists. If the game is beyond a week or 2 weeks, to
Mhm.
them it's old because it's like, and I guess it's because of like the idea of the news cycle. We always got to be on what's
Yeah.
next.
Well, it's
So
also it's also a quantity over quality issue too. Like you said, we used to get less games, and because of that, the ones that we did get were usually games that were worked on and QA tested and, were pretty ready to ship final products by the time we got our hands on it. Whereas nowadays, when you're churning out a shit ton of games, you just can't account for the type of bugs that would come from, a few months of quality assurance testing or, focus testing or whatever. So it's like the music industry. Nowadays, it is easier to create music than even 5, 6 years ago. It's
yeah,
advancing that fast. I mean, I used to record albums back when you used to have to go to a guy to record your music, the actual microphone output, of your half stack or whatever. He would mic up your drums and you would record in a room, like an actual recording studio, whereas you can go to Name, I don't know, 15 of your friends. 3 of them have the equipment required to record music right now. So you could go anywhere and you could master it through software and you could disperse it through the internet. And man, there are bands nowadays that I would have never ever gotten a hold of because they're so easy to get to, right? Their music is out there.
Hmm.
It's, it's on iTunes, it's on YouTube. People are promoting it on Reddit. And that's good. That's good because I can get my hands on so much more interesting, experimental, weird music that wouldn't get popular enough for you to normally see it on MTV or something like that. And that's good. But on the negative end, it is drowned out by millions of bands that are constantly putting out stuff that I would argue is probably relatively low quality. And I think that's what's happening in the game industry. We're spoiled for choice, but those choices aren't often great.
You said MTV, and then I'm thinking, when's the last time they played a music
Oh,
video?
yeah, that's showing how old I am. Okay, so here's the interesting thing. In my lifetime, I got to witness the popularity of MTV, MTV starting to show music videos less, and then creating MTV2 so that they could have 24 hours of music videos on a channel, and then MTV not playing enough music, MTV2 not playing enough music videos. So I got to see the rise and fall of a lot of dynasties.
Yeah, it's so crazy, man. Like, because we're the same age. It's like going and seeing how that transition happened. I mean, even the advent of social media,
Oh yeah,
like we were there for that.
it's crazy to think about.
Smartphones,
Mhm,
Jesus, man, like it's
yeah,
crazy when you look at the advancement of technology, the shift in culture and people.
mhm.
Like
It's
it's
happening
wild.
more rapidly now than it ever has, but that's how it works. As technology gets better, bigger, more efficient, lower cost, more people get their hands on it, more people are able to develop, they're able to experiment, they're able to create. And as one increases, the other one increases exponentially because you get more tech into more hands, more internet into more hands. You get more sites, you get more ideas, right? You get more startups for concepts beyond social media we haven't even thought of yet. Some guy is already planning and pitching, investment opportunities to people of some shit we could never imagine. It's because he got what, like an Apple II when he was 5 years old or whatever, right? So as that stuff increases, as 6-year-olds walk around with smartphones tethered to the internet, we're going to start seeing this stuff even pick up even a faster pace than old guys like us in our 30s are seeing now.
Do you ever feel like, um okay, but as a point of reference, like, how, like, we were, let's say, like, when we were teenagers and, you know, say our grandparents or older generation, like, yeah, I don't know, the music, or I don't know the movies or the actors. I feel that way now
Hmm.
when it comes to like I don't feel like a lot of, like, when it comes to music.
Hmm.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff I'm finding that's really interesting, but there's a lot like the mainstream shit, which I guess you could say mainstream has always kind of been trash on a level, but not as trash as it is now to me.
Yeah,
But
and it's hard to tell what it is. Are things like objectively getting worse as far as quality goes? Or are we just getting old and we're used to how things were in the 90s and,
uh,
whatever? That's the question. And it's hard to answer for me. It really is because I'm like you. I feel like disaffected, like I don't really have a home nowadays. So at my house, we have a really weird setup with our house, and we could either have cable TV or our internet without splitting the single line that comes out of the box, apparently. I don't know,
mhm,
there's some kinda limitation, and so we haven't had cable TV at my house, I mean, over 8 years now. So to
mhm.
say that I'm not very well informed as to what's going on in pop culture is an understatement. I don't know what shows are happening. Is reality TV still a thing? I don't know, like, and you don't get to hear a lot of modern music because of that. When you're on the internet, you kind of stick to your circles, and
Yeah.
getting outside of that circle can be kind of hard, especially in the mainstream. You have a bias to just not like it anyways. But I feel like in the 90s, things were again more experimental. Let's take music for example. whatever today's MTV analog would be, the MTV equivalent of modern day, like the front page of the iTunes library, something like that, right? Uh,
Mhm.
on MTV, when we were growing up, you had bands like Bjork, Primus, Pantera, and Cannibal Corpse sharing equal billing, like Maisie Star, right? Like bands like Cracker.
Yeah.
These were all bands that not only sounded different from each other, but different from the stuff that was popular at the time. Southern metal like that was not a concept before Pantera. Whatever the hell you would classify the experimental shit Primus was doing, nobody knew and no one was doing it, right? Even like early 2000s, 311, no one was doing like a weird reggae, trippy hip hop, heavy metal sort of sound, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, no one was.
we had that, and it didn't necessarily when Pantera came out, there wasn't this rush of Pantera clones. It just didn't exist. Nine Inch Nails came out. There wasn't who's the Nine Inch Nails analog that you can think of, right? But nowadays, when something hits any sort of following whatsoever, we have to just look at your watch and then set, it to 6 months and go, okay, well, this 6 months is over. This is all I'm going to see. As far as video games go, I am old enough to remember when the cover-based shooters started, and as soon as I
Okay.
saw that, looking back with 2020 vision, I should have just, like, put myself in a coma for the next 3 years because that was it. I played one of them already, so there we go, that's all we're gonna see, and that sucks because back in the day, something would get popular, and it'd be this singular event, and be like, "Oh, that was kinda cool," and we move on. Nowadays, something gets popular and it continues to stay popular just in different forms through different mediums. And it's different. It's different. I don't know. Like I said, we're probably really biased. So it's very hard to say what we're saying is correct. But it does seem interesting that the method by which all this stuff gets distributed is sort of changed.
Not to mention, but since you brought up like cover-based shooters, I was thinking like I never would have thought a concept that was brought into by, I guess, from the first person perspective, we could say like Virtual Cop and Time Crisis.
Mhm.
Uh, they started that, but then from a third person, I remember Winback on the 64
Oh, yeah.
did that, and then the next thing I remember doing that was like I think it's Kill Switch.
Kill that switch. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And then it from then after that, like it was just cover-based shooters were everywhere. Like that was all the
Mhm.
rage.
Yeah.
And then the over-the-shoulder camera started with Resident Evil 4,
Yeah.
and then that which is still a thing. And it
Yep.
is it's wild seeing how I don't I guess uninspired could be mean to say, but like
Mm.
how copied that formula or formulaic that was
Yeah, for
going
sure.
forward. Um, hell, I remember when Halo was the first. No, well, technically Halo was the second successful console shooter, and then
Mhm.
everyone was trying to copy
Yeah, I was a PC guy at the time, so I hated Halo with a passion.
that.
Oh god, people were like, "Oh, can you believe this?" And then you have a story mode, and then there's multiplayer, and I'm like, "Where the fuck have you guys been?" Like, this shit's been settled. We've been doing this whole time. Like 8, 9 years ago, we were busy doing this shit, but I think the Xbox is more geared towards casual, maybe not okay, casual you'll say, but people who are more likely just to be involved in mainstream stuff. Whatever's happening on the radio or on TV right now, those people are probably tuned into, and the Xbox is part of that. Whereas it doesn't mean the games that came out for the Xbox were all geared towards that audience. But if you were putting money into something and somebody told you the platform was mostly this audience, you'd probably gear it towards that. But fuck, I probably shouldn't talk shit about Xbox fans, should I? I will be honest though, in getting my Xbox later in life, there are some great titles for it. Most of
Mhm.
them are multi-platform, but usually they play or run better on the Xbox anyway. So that's from a gearhead perspective, like me, that's awesome. I would say easy 97% of the library is pure trash, though. just a solid 97%, without a doubt.
Actually, the Xbox people they're not that bad. It's the Sony ponies that are worse.
Really? See,
Yeah.
I haven't been a like a manufacturer, like a console manufacturer fanboy since like 1998. So I get to miss out on a lot of that debate. I remember the big 360 versus PS3 war that started, and then it
Mhm.
continued in PS4, Xbox One, especially on YouTube. There's channels dedicated specifically to like the console wars.
Crap Gamer was like
Oh, Crap Gamer. Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
So I got to miss out on a lot of that, which is good because that would have frustrated me to no end. But it is kind of interesting that that sort of continued and the industry takes advantage of that too. Like you said, Sony and Nintendo obviously takes advantage of its user base. We still don't fry Nintendo for copyright striking everyone who plays their games and then offering those people the opportunity to make money for Nintendo by continuing to do that. We still don't blow them up for that shit. So yeah, the brand loyalty is out of fucking control nowadays. It's insane. I mean, you could say you enjoy the PS4, the PS5. I love my PS4. I think it has a shit amount of memory. Switching between games to apps is not smooth at all. Uh, you can like a console. You don't have to like the people that put it out. I like music from people I don't want to be around. You don't necessarily have to like be fully involved in everything you enjoy. You can just kind of like it, I guess.
I think that's why like when I hear the console people, yes, people, I'm PC elitist. Um when I hear like, especially with this last generation, well, no, this current generation, when people were talking about, oh, the Xbox Series X got 10 teraflops, the PS5's got 8 teraflops, and it's got this, and it's got this much, and I'm over here like, yeah, but my PC can run games better than both of these things.
Yeah.
So,
Well, what's interesting too is the argument, and it was a good argument, used to be, well, yeah, your PC can run that stuff, but it's slightly complicated. I don't want to learn a new trade to play a video game. And if that's the case, yeah, fair enough. But I think nowadays you can't say that anymore because I mean, we're not nearing the same amount of like tweaking you can do on a PC game, but you can select your frame rate, you can select your output resolution, you can select your performance mode. You have to install it to a hard drive. It has to have an internet connection. I mean, we're losing the distinctions between PC and console nowadays, and we started going that way during the days of the original Xbox and leaving Power PC architecture behind and just using desktop CPUs and GPUs. We're getting to the point now where you can't make that argument anymore. That, well, at least on console it's simpler. No, it's not. We have platforms to distribute content just like consoles do on PC. We run them better and we can run them more efficiently at lower or higher settings. It's more variable, whereas on a console it's just like, yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, so nowadays that you really can't have the console PC fight unless you just like one controller over the other. But then again, you could play any PC game with a console controller. So we're that debate is done and over with, but it's not for, and it's not because like one's essentially a winner. It's because it's the same conversation. We're just talking about two products that do a similar thing. One just doesn't do it as well.
yeah, and some people would be like, some people will say that, well, you get exclusives if you get a PlayStation or Xbox. Not really when they're coming to Steam, or you can get, you know, Game Pass, or even just buy
Mhm.
stuff from the Xbox app on Windows.
Yeah,
Like with the exception of Nintendo, you can play everything on PC.
yeah. I mean, it's nearly everything, and that used to be another argument. Well, the exclusives, and again, exclusive doesn't mean what it used to.
It
Which
really
which really
doesn't.
sucks because I used to really enjoy the idea of consoles having, like, a series tied to that console. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm still messed up about the whole Squaresoft going to Sony thing. I mean, obviously, it worked out well, but, Final Fantasy on the Super Nintendo just makes sense, right?
Yeah.
They made the right call, obviously, but it does kind of suck to see developers and like console manufacturers not having that brand anymore that you could look at and sort of like define the attitude of that console. You sort of miss that because nowadays it's just an amorphous blob. It's like, oh, I want to play Uncharted. It's like, well, maybe you could play that elsewhere. It's like, well, fuck, why do I need the PS5 then?
um so since we're talking about games, let's talk about games journalists. How you feel
Let's
about them?
please not. It's it's so hard to say because you don't want to be a jerk to people you've never met before, but God, just the fucking worst human beings. And there's a lot of reasons for that, and there are, I'm sure, games journalists who would probably shake my hand, have a conversation with me, and we'd be friends with each other. But it seems like the amount of games journalists who are interested in playing video games and reporting on how those video games play are almost non-existent nowadays.
Yeah.
I think a majority of games journalism is not so much reporting on the video game industry, but more I have an idea. I have a I don't know, I have a worldview, and video games aren't necessarily the point of my journalism, but they're the
Mhm.
medium through which I deliver my worldview to other people. And that wouldn't be a problem because that's just, hey, express your opinion, man. I don't care what industry you're in. If I start making, if, for example, we're talking about like PC specs and stuff on this stream, but we're also talking about video games, like, no matter what category you're in, express yourself to your full extent and tell the truth as you see it. I'm super happy about that. But
Yeah.
as those games journalists began to grow in number, they began dictating the way the market works. And now developers have to take into account a very tiny subset of gaming journalists, not even video game players, not people who play and support their product, but people who get free shit, whose
Yeah.
purchasing power is non-existent. Video games are now made not so much to appease the people, the audience that enjoy those games, but journalists who might get mad if, like, I don't know, there's like a men's sign outside of the men's room or something that would upset no one on earth, just an unassuming thing. A games journalist can mention in an article or a video or some type of just a tweet, and that developer drops sales because of that. And that's why I have a negative opinion to games journalists, not because I disagree with them, because I do for the most part. I'm sure I agree on a bunch of shit with them, but their disagreements have worked their way into my video games, and that's when we have an issue. You can express your
Mhm.
opinions, but then when those opinions start opening my door, oh, we got issues now.
Yeah. It's gotten to the point where, to piggyback on what you're saying, like, they're expressing their worldview, and gaming or games journalism has become the vehicle for that. It's like, I mean, I've saw, like, especially last year. Last year was really bad when it came to just about everything.
Mm.
People were incredibly, uh, how do we say, they were,
Fucking cunts.
yes, there you go. We can go with that. That's those people last year. But, I saw some reviews last year, and I've seen some this year, but not as many. But, like, I've seen games journalists go into whole tirades, political tirades, social tirades, and I'm reading this like, what the fuck does this have to do with the video game?
Yeah.
Like, it's just, you've gotten so many people now in gaming that I feel are not gamers.
Mm.
They're activists.
Yeah.
And because this is the number one medium right now, it's outdone movies and
Yeah.
TV.
Absolutely.
This is where they're able to do it. Like, look at someone like, Jason Schreier.
Hmm.
He used games journalism to get to where he is now.
Of course. Yeah. And on one end, you got to give it up to someone for a good hustle, right? Like you have
Yeah.
to appreciate that. But on the other end, So I think the obvious counter argument to that would be, well, even in the newspaper, they have, periodicals, opinion pieces and stuff. And that's true. But imagine if
Okay.
you open your daily newspaper, which is probably also aging me. Imagine you open your daily newspaper and it was, 2 news articles and then 6 pages of opinion pieces. You probably would have an issue with that too. And that's the issue with the whole games journalist thing. It's not like there are games journalists who do this. It's that games journalists do this. The entirety of the industry nearly does this. And the amount of people who focus on news regarding video game development and releases, reviews or critiques of products and technical analysis. I mean, are we exaggerating when we say maybe 3% of the games journalism market is dedicated to those three things? I don't think so, or at least what I see. And, being technically, I guess, in the circle at the very least of games journalism, game analysis, whatever you want to call it, I don't see a majority of people doing that. So that's where the issue lies. It's not that, oh man, some of these games journalists I disagree with. It's like, no, this is the plurality of people who do this job, and the people who do this job affect the video games that I get to enjoy. And and here's the worst part about it too, is a lot of times you agree with the opinion being made. Like you and I are racial minorities. I myself am bisexual, so I'm not necessarily on the straight end of the spectrum. So when games journalists talk about uh, furthering racial minority status in video games, sexual orientation in video games. Hey, yeah, I agree with your position on that. I just don't necessarily need it shoved straight into my face when I'm playing a video game, despite the fact that I agree with those things. In the 90s, that was my teenage angst issue. That was my activism, was gay rights. That was my entire thing. Like that's how I started getting into the idea of like counterculture and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree wholeheartedly with the concepts they're expressing sometimes. I just disagree that they need to be present in my fucking video games.
Yeah, it's like it's so in your face, and you have whole series now that are just straight activism. Like, was Square Enix's Life is Strange? That whole franchise
Oh god. And
is
you know what sucks too is and I'm sure there are people who disagree with me because it's a very subjective matter, but I would argue that the majority of the stories from the individual Life is Strange releases are not so much stories written to tell a story, but stories written to prove a point. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Like, and that's a real issue because you and I grew up reading, Marvel's X-Men, and it was obvious in the 60s, but in the 90s growing up, it wasn't quite as obvious that this was a clear analog for racial tensions. But the X-Men story was not about, obviously this is about racial tensions. Everybody look at this. It was telling it through analogy, and it was really good. Like I got into that whole mutants and humans, and the mutants didn't necessarily do anything wrong. Humans hate them all. Like, okay, as an adult, I understand that, but that's because it was relatively subtle. There was no panel that said, "Hey, by the way, just for context, this is what we're referencing." Whereas in a video game, things aren't so subtle. And that's the shitty thing, because I love watching media that disagrees with my own, I don't know, political or social taste. As long as that media is telling a really cool story. I used to absolutely love, I haven't seen it in forever, but the movie Romper Stomper,
Oh
which
yeah, I
was
remember that one.
it was
Yeah.
it was a great movie. But I mean,
Yeah.
there's Nazi skinheads in it, right? So you don't
Mm-hmm.
support the things that are happening on screen, but it tells such an interesting story about, most of the time we see this like underdog out not underdog, I guess you wouldn't say, like outside of the norm perspective, and that's always
Mm-hmm.
portrayed in a movie as like the good perspective, the one that's not popular and not part of the mainstream. But then they have this one, they're like, no, there's people with bad opinions on the outside of the mainstream, right? So it's a really interesting story. It had something to say. But here's the crazy part. This was a movie starring Nazi skinheads that wasn't necessarily promoting Nazi skinheads. They were just telling a story through Nazi skinheads. Whereas in video games, that's not the case. They're not telling a story through social ideas. They're telling social ideas through a story.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's so it's to the point where it's like you can't even uh, say you don't like the way that they're telling the story, or you don't like that they're just shoving this shit in your face. If you go on any social media and speak against it,
Then they think that you don't like the point that they're trying to prove. They
and
put
then
you on
they're
the other side.
yeah,
That sucks. That's a shitty thing to say. It is shitty because again, it's just I mean to be absolutely concrete about this, a lot of these opinions I'm fully endorsing personally for myself. I'm sure there's Christians listening to that. I don't know if you're Christian, but
no,
those people, I would assume, myself totally not included in that. But I'm sure people who are Christians cringe at watching evangelical pastors on TV, even though they agree with the tenets of Christianity, right? So,
yeah,
people like you and me sort of by default have to support the concept of normalizing and integrating racial minorities into whatever the
yeah.
majority race is in a country, because that's sort of what we do as an everyday practice. But that being said, we don't watch stories about that. Like, we don't consume fantasy media to like sit in front of this desk and have a podcast. We don't play podcast simulator, right? This stuff we already do. We don't like having those things shoved down our throat, despite the fact that we agree with them. Or I'm speaking for you a lot. I don't want to, but
No, but I agree with you. So if I
yeah,
disagreed, I would have interrupted you. But no,
yeah,
you're right.
that's the huge issue is, and then when you speak out about the practice of delivering this message this way, people assume you disagree with the message. It's a shitty way to argue, you know? It'll be like I would say, Adolf Hitler, I don't know if anybody knew this, actually dyed his hair green. And you would go, that's not true. And I bet, what are you, a Hitler supporter, right? Like, you disagree with this idea about Hitler? That's what discourse is among games journalists. And when games journalists get pointed, we talked about this before the show started, when one of them gets nailed for not playing a game or not being, for example, remember back when Cuphead released and there's that games journalist that
Oh
couldn't figure out what
God.
the fuck a double jump was? Listen, I am very good about just making sure that I'm not trying to spit shade at people who have done nothing to me. But if you have a fucking job in games journalism and you can't figure out a double jump, you're out. You're done. That's the end of it. You're finished. I'm sorry. If you had a contract as playing AAA baseball or something, what, I don't know, is AAA like the big leagues? I don't know the
I think
terminology.
so.
But if you did, and then you got up to bat and it turned out you had no formal training whatsoever and got no hits, I assume you would be fired the next day. And that is what games journalists are. You are the people who have risen above us and speak for us and speak to us. And then we figure out it's like, oh, well, he's good at other games. I don't give a shit. It doesn't listen. I have nothing but insults for people like that. But when that does happen, they circle the wagon, and that's another issue, is they're not necessarily advocating on behalf of people like us who buy video games, and they're not giving us more purchasing power by allowing us to see what a game is like before we buy it. They're not doing that. They're self-advocating for other games journalists. And then even when they do make a very good point, socially or politically in some type of opinion piece, you have to ask yourself, does this person believe this, or is it because they have to write this piece? They'll be kicked out of the industry, you know? I mean, people may not like them, but how many open Christian conservative games journalists can you think of off the top? Can you research on fucking Google? You know? And I'm not necessarily saying that's the right way to be, but I don't necessarily think that, how you feel politically should decide the profession you go into either. So that
I mean, literally everything right now is slanted to one particular side, and if
it
you
is, which
show
sucks if you're on that side because you look like a fucking idiot by
yeah.
comparison. That's the issue, man. I mean, you could be incredibly socially liberal and you look like I don't know, like a fucking Christian conservative by comparison to what's happening in industries that have nothing to do with social policy or politics in general. That's insanity to me. That's pure craziness. Because I like the idea of political or social discourse. It's fun to see ideas get changed. When I go to sleep, I listen to debates or long opinion pieces, like verbal stuff here on YouTube. because I like listening to that shit. I don't necessarily think it needs to be forced into other mediums, though. I mean, on a small scale, sure, there's some games, properties, movies, that were made for that purpose, and it's interesting to see something go outside the norm and do something like that. But when it is the norm, where's our escape from reality then? Which is why we do all this stuff. Even if you play video games for the most mundane reason, I need to level up in an MMO. Very mundane sequential tasks that you can complete while you're asleep. You're not doing that specifically because you enjoy clicking, 467,000 times for a level up. You like the idea of escapism and finding something to lose yourself in. And if the thing you're losing yourself in is constantly reminding you how shit the world is and how bad off everybody is, you're just not going to consume it anymore. That's a
And then
shitty thing too.
it gets to the point where, like, case in point, you remember the whole Activision thing a couple months ago.
Activision. I may not be familiar. What's all this about?
The whole thing with it came out about the Activision Blizzard situation with.
Oh, right. Yeah. I forgot that they're together. I do it all the time.
I had to catch myself. I was like, Activision. Oh wait, yeah, Activision Blizzard. But yeah, like that whole situation, and then the whole activism around that, where and I saw people in the games industry where they're like, if you play an Activision Blizzard title, they're like, oh, I got an opinion about you, or I'm going to unfollow you, or all this other shit. I'm grateful for the opportunities that a lot of people in the gaming industry give me to cover stuff, to, events I've gotten to go to. But I'll be honest, a lot of you guys in the gaming industry, and I'll go full screen and say this, a lot of you guys in the game industry are fucking insufferable. Like, get the fuck off of Twitter. I don't need to know every goddamn thought that goes to your head. I don't need to know when you go to the bathroom, to piss, to shit. I don't need to know what you eat. There's a guy who used to be at Square Enix, and he's not anymore, who claimed that he felt like he was dying. He felt like this and that, and like every fucking 5 minutes he was tweeting, and I'm thinking, motherfucker, go to the goddamn hospital if you're dying. Like, it's just this thing with how these people and they act a certain way. Like, this guy was just like going on and on about this, and then next thing I know, he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm at PAX," and I'm like, "What?
Yeah,
what?" It just, I can't. There's some days I'm like, I tell my wife, I'm like, I don't know if I want to continue being in the quadrant of where I am, because we're gaming's quadrants. This feel like I don't know if I want to stay in it, because I really can't stand 99% of the people in this field, especially when something happens and then everyone's a political activist. Oh, I'm an ally. Dude, I got a story for you. It's story time.
Let's do it.
So the other week, like a week and a half ago, I did a live stream. And I did a live stream. It was the first time I streamed in months, because schedule's been fucked up with, having the baby and everything. Mm-hmm. She's selling her little routine now, so I can do stuff more regularly. But it was the first time streaming a game in about four to 5 months. And, I got what's the whole thing going on Twitch. And also it started happening on YouTube. It's the hate raids, people coming through saying racist shit left and right.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, so I screenshotted some of the stuff I got, and I said, this just gotta stop, because it's fucking ridiculous. And especially it was a sponsored stream. I had
shit.
Yeah, like it was really bad for me, because like I got that new Alien game, like Alien Fire Team game.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And they sponsored the video or the stream, and so like they asked me about that, and I had to answer for that. And like, hey,
Mm,
my mods were doing the best they could. I was trying to handle it as well. So I had to switch my stream over to subscriber only chat.
that's crazy.
So, I posted it on Facebook. Yes, I still have Facebook, unfortunately. I posted it on Twitter and Instagram. And I just said, same message across the board. Shit needs to stop. It's ridiculous. We're in the 21st century. It's 2021. People need to, get over this racist bullshit.
Mm,
And one of my friends on Facebook, he's a really, really good friend of mine. He's Japanese,
mm,
and he commented like, some people have nothing better to do with their time than to just act stupid on the internet, which
yeah,
I agree. I
for
agree
sure.
with that. So this other guy who works at Naughty Dog
Mm,
got triggered by my friend saying that and decided to attack my friend, just go off on him, like curse at him, all this other shit. And all because my friend said people have nothing better to do. And
mm,
so when I saw this whole string of this conversation, I told the guy, it's like, yo, you need to pump the brakes on that. That you're
mhm.
going too far with that. Like that was uncalled for. Why are you cursing him out for saying, like, we're in the middle of a fucking pandemic? There's more people have more time than ever before to
So
do a
what was
lot
the
of dumb
specific
shit.
issue? Because it seems like what the guy said was relatively benign. It's like, "Oh, yeah, a lot of people just got too much free time to do dumb shit." Like, I feel like that's a perfect explanation for why these hate raids are going on.
Right. So the guy, the game industry guy, his whole thing was my friend was being too casual about the racism that I experienced. And he
Jesus
said for
Christ.
himself,
Yeah.
he's one of these ally type people.
He's speaking on
So
your behalf.
yeah, he was upset for me. He was,
Right, right.
enraged for me. So he was looking out for me. And, he said, well, I'll never do that again since, you didn't like it. And so I was like, dude, hold up. Like, why are you coming at me? Like, why are you talking to me like that? You're talking down to me. Like,
Mhm,
chill out about that. And so he just got more triggered and just kept going off and off on me. And I'm like, okay, so first off, and I hate using this term. I hate using it because I don't agree with it, but I see this guy throw around white privilege all the time. He's a white guy at Night
mhm,
Dog. I hate the term white privilege just because
mhm.
I feel like it's too casually used.
Sure.
So he throws it around all the time. So I threw it at him. I was like, hey, check your white privilege.
Yeah.
Optically, this doesn't look good. You're white. I'm a minority. You're
Mm,
talking down to me. You're cursing at me. Not really good optically.
yeah.
Um, Calm down. I didn't ask you to get offended for me. I didn't ask you
Mm,
to speak for me. And, it's you're going too far with this.
mm,
If you're saying that you're never going to stand up for me, like you never intended to anyway. Like I hate when people do the microaggressions that
yeah.
you know. So he got so upset that he went on this tirade of cursing me out, this and that. And so basically, I said to him, I said, "So what you're saying to me is, how dare you talk to me like this, you ungrateful id?" I said, because
Mm,
that's basically how you're coming off. Like I'm ungrateful for you, this ally, being in my defense. Because I'm helpless, whatever. So that pissed him off to the point where he sent me threatening, like literally threatening me, um, audio messages. I got videos. I got whole threads. He said he made a press kit about me that he's sending to all the game companies so that
sweet.
they never work with me again. And I'm over here like, you do realize this doesn't look good for you.
Mm,
But and I tweet about this. I basically in my tweet I said this is why when people say, "Oh, I'm an ally to this minority group, or I'm an ally to this," to me it's bullshit because there's this sense that a lot of them have where it's this I'm a savior.
Yeah, for
You
sure.
know, and I don't agree with that. I don't need you fighting my battles for me.
Mm,
You know, keep that shit to yourself because when you expose it, how they are comes out. And that guy, he went postal.
yeah.
And I've actually had some people in the gaming industry that have cut ties with me because I put that guy on blast. But I'm like, then that lets me know what type of person you were.
Yeah. I guess I'm really glad I don't interact with anyone in really any industry. I have like friends that make content and stuff, but I don't have I guess you call business relationships with literally anyone, which is really like I remember the last time we talked, you turned me on to a few places you could go to talk with companies and then they could send out
Mhm.
like review content and stuff. And I tried that for a little bit, but I found out that I was spending more time on that than actually reviewing games. So I was like, man, I can't talk to anybody anymore. I just gotta, which is lucky for me. And most people aren't able to make a living at video game content creation without being, at least tangentially involved in the video game industry. And I'm
Yeah.
really lucky to have a very small niche that I've carved out for myself and other people too. That I don't necessarily have to use the game industry as a middleman. Thank God. Because if you think you're severing ties, I mean, just if I open my mouth for a single second with your connections, it'd be over.
I mean, and that's why like I'm at this point now where I've kind of been pivoting away from like I still cover stuff, like I still get stuff sent to me, you know, and I'll cover it because I've got the I agree to do it.
Mhm.
But like I've been telling my wife, like there are things that I want to start covering that aren't mainstream. Like I don't necessarily want to continue to review, keyboards and mice and controllers and consoles and
Mm.
whatever the current AAA game is because the superficiality of it is starting to not it's starting to get to me.
I get
The
that.
way these people are acting is getting to me. And I
Mm.
don't, a lot of things they say I do agree with,
Yeah.
but it's the delivery, the attitude, the
Mhm.
indignation,
Sure.
the, you know, culture that I'm
Mhm.
just not a fan of. Like what I've been slowly pivoting, like some people like, oh, like I've got a lot of my audience that don't like the fact that I started doing reactions.
Mm.
And I started doing reactions to King of Fighters because King of Fighters 15 has been I've been hyped. This
It
is
looks good as well.
right? Like this is the first time I've seen a King of Fighters game that is getting some mainstream attention. It's always been niche. It's always been second to Street Fighter or
Yeah.
anything
I'm
Capcom
not gonna
related.
lie, I've always been like a Capcom fighter guy. I never ventured out too much, but the last King of Fighters game, it looked super dope. I wanted to get into it competitively, and I just never got a chance. I stayed wrapped up with Street Fighter 5 like a crazy person. But, I think I'm gonna try out Strive. I've never been an anime fighter, guys. Too many complex systems going on top of each other, you know? If it was just Roman cancels, okay, but, there's, like, every character you pick has subsystems you have to learn, and it's a whole thing. But, yeah, I feel like I mean, it's a thing that's coming out that you're interested in. I don't care so much how the content is delivered or what form it takes, as long as I get the feeling that whoever's, uh, delivering the content truly feels that way about the product or about
Yeah.
he's like, "Holy shit, this character's coming out. I had a history with this character." Now I'm like, "Okay, I'm endeared to your position," versus, just some industry shill who's like, "Oh, I'm really excited about purchase game."
Because it's like with my reactions to King of Fighters and I started doing stuff for other fighting games and other games coming out, I'm also delivering my history with it, uh, a breakdown. Like
Yeah.
sometimes I'll like with the King of Fighters trailers, I'll look at frames of animation,
Mhm.
like what's the hitboxes,
Yeah.
uh what's the history of this character, because I'm legitimately like these are things that I want to talk about,
Mhm.
and my core audience doesn't care about that. My core audience wants me to cover things that I'm not interested in. They want me to do all the Nintendo news shilling and all this other
Mm,
shit that I just don't fucking care about.
yeah.
I'm like, I don't care about this. I don't care about what's going on in Smash. I don't care what the new Switch, whatever the fuck it's called, coming out. I don't care about
Mm,
that. I care about King of Fighters. I care about fighting games. I care about retro games. Like I've been on this major retro, like you and we talked about this. Like I'm trying
yeah.
to get my hands on the Tink X5.
Oh,
Like
please.
I
Please do.
want that. To like, I like literally got I've been really building up my retro collection just because like I'm going back and I'm enjoying things from my childhood, my teenage years
Yeah.
that, some things I never could afford back in the day that I'm getting to experience for the first time. Like I never got to play Lunar back in the day just because I could never
Ooh,
find it and my parents wouldn't buy it. And I was able to
yeah.
get the collector's edition for Lunar 1 and 2, complete in
Mhm.
box, everything for like I spent like 150 for both.
That's
So
not
I got
bad at all, dude. That's
so
pretty
it's
good.
like, I've been like seriously on a super retro kit. I got Thousand Arms, which is
Nice.
crazy because
Yeah.
that game is super expensive. And I had a one of my viewers, since I started talking about retro games, sent it to me. They're like, "Hey, you can keep it. I got 2 copies. You can keep
That
it."
fucking rules. That's cool as
Right?
hell. That's an expensive game, and it's weird as all hell too.
Right? It would never work in today's.
No. Although, to be fair, I think with Persona popularizing the, like, time management stuff, the dating sim
Mhm.
is not so far removed from that, you know?
But, like the this moving away from, I guess you could say, the mainstream, and
Mhm.
it's a transition. I know that, like I said, my core audience doesn't care for it. I've lost support. Like I'm doing this full
Mhm.
time. I've been doing YouTube full time or content creating full time for 2 years now, and this pivot that I've been doing for the last 6 or 7 months, a lot of them don't like it, and I'm like, that's fair.
Yeah.
If you want to go somewhere else, fine. You don't have to support the content I'm making, but if my heart's not in what I'm making, if I'm not passionate about it, then I might as well just go back to a regular job
Yeah, for sure.
at that point. But people think that content creating is easy. You just get in front of a camera, like, and that's it. No, there's a
So
lot of shit.
it's actually interesting because 'cause you're absolutely right. Like, the way people think about content creation is not how it works. That being said, I've always had the position that if you work at a gas station for, like, a 4-hour shift, you're doing way more work than I do here on YouTube. But that's my
Hmm.
traditional, conventional idea of what work is. I used to work I've laid cement, I've installed home theater systems. I used to have to crawl through attics to install coax and speaker wire for, home theater gear. So I've done work, and what we're doing right now, man, not bad, not a bad way to make a paycheck. Uh, so in a certain way, it's not hard work as far as like I don't break a sweat editing a video. But that being said, there's so much more to it. It is so much more complicated than you may assume given looking at the final product. Even with your reaction videos, which, you get the feeling that, okay, he has a camera there, he's got a microphone, he watches a video, and then there's your reaction thing. Getting screen recording, screen capture stuff to work correctly, having an audio interface that drives your microphone, people don't think about, oh, do you have Photoshop skills? Are you willing to pay someone to make your thumbnails then, right? There's a lot of aspects about content creation that just through watching the finished product you can't see, uh for recording a voiceover, you just speak into a mic, right? It's not good when I speak into a mic and do that, right? So you have to develop form when you record. You have to figure out how to write sentences correctly and speak them, and I have issues with dyslexia, so I have to read off a script. So we're talking about when I go to record a 45-minute a script for a 45-minute video, I'm in there 4 or 5 hours easy because it's all me messing up takes because I can't read right. So there are aspects of it that are so buried underneath the finished product that no one would ever know how weird this shit is, man. And it's never like, oh, okay, I have the video game console, I have my capture card, I'll press start on the thing, I'll hit record, and we're good to go. No, it's like, oh well, it crashed. Now I have to driver update. Of course, can we roll back the driver for my capture card? Oh no, now I'm not seeing it right. Like it's an entire thing, and it's just like any other job. I could look at a plumber comes to my house and then fixes my toilet, say, and I go, well, I could have done that. No, I could not have done however many years of an apprenticeship, or learning and receiving accreditation from some type of thing. You only see the finished product and you assume that's as easy as it is. When someone posts like an ab picture on Twitter, yeah, it must be nice being that lucky, and you see that guy weighing his ketchup he puts on his stuff. That's how it is with everything, though. I think it's really easy to see something and then just see the finished product and then kind of assume the process behind it, and then it's never correct.
It really isn't. And it's, like there's one person I know, like one of my exes, she made a post on Facebook about, what's going to happen if the internet ever went down, because all us YouTubers and streamers, we'd have no way to make income because all we make comes through YouTube, and we have no skills outside of that. And then I commented on there like, oh really, no skills? I'm like, oh okay, so fuck me for having to learn how to video edit, self-taught
Yeah.
video editing, video editing, videography, voiceover,
Audio engineering, yeah, that's a big part of it.
right,
Social media management, right? Like,
marketing.
yeah,
Right.
PR, marketing. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that you could do as a YouTuber that, I mean, I tell this to people all the time. Start doing content creation. Worst case scenario, you've just taught yourself several trades. Even if you never make $1 on YouTube, you just an immeasurable amount of money you just brought into your future self by teaching yourself another trade or several other trades. So yeah, that's that's a pretty dumb take. I mean, not on top of that, like, we weren't born content creators. We could just go back to doing the jobs we did before content. It's not a big deal. It's like not a huge issue. Construction companies would hire me. It wouldn't be a problem.
Like she was so salty. She's over here like, yeah, she's like, at least I got a job at the, at the hospital. I don't have to worry about doing videos. And I'm thinking like, okay, so like I commented, I was like, so does that mean that you wish you could not physically work hard and just make more money? I'm like,
That
there's
is that is the whole
OnlyFans.
reason to do it, honestly. Perhaps only.
Right?
I was
I'm
actually I was
like,
thinking about starting up an OnlyFans a while back. I tweeted about it because I really get into fitness, and I thought it'd be a cool way to kind of like, because people on my Twitter probably don't necessarily care about my workout split. They don't care about my
mhm.
diet so much, or maybe some of them do, but a small minority. So I was like, oh, I'll start an OnlyFans and then just do like, oh, here's how I institute my lifts. Here's my process. Here's my diet. Here's my cardio routine, whatever. And OnlyFans actually responded, said, "We'd love to have you," on the tweet, and then sent me like some contact info, which is very nice of them. So I feel like I might slut it up a little bit, man. I might show some nip, get on some OnlyFans.
I mean, hey, I got this. There's nothing wrong. Get your money how you get it.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't make. I mean, I may disagree with the industry you're in, but if you're making money and you're feeding your family, or you're just making yourself happy by buying the things you want to buy and living the life you want to live, I mean, as long as you're not hurting anybody in the process, it's real hard for me to have a negative opinion about that. Even if I don't like the industry you're involved in, like you're in the, I don't know, you're in the CIA spying on American citizens, like that sucks. But
Yeah.
on the other end, you live a pretty comfortable life. You're doing your thing. Fuck it.
And like that's why like a lot of people I know, like especially out here in Hawaii, they're like, oh, so you must make a killing like doing YouTube and doing podcasting. I'm like, I make enough to make ends meet, to pay the
Mhm.
bills, and have a minute amount left over to put into savings.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
I'm living, my core needs are being met. I'm able
Yeah.
to take care of my family. And that's, to me, that's all I need. I don't need a metric fuck ton of money to just go and splurge on. I mean, I would love to have like a whole room of arcade cabinets and retro equipment. I'd love to
It'd be
be able to go
nice.
on eBay and be like, "Hey, you got a Tink X5? Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, here's a grand. Let me just go ahead and get that right now since it's
Mm.
never in stock." But you know, like, but being able to just meet my core needs, I'm content with that. And
Yeah.
yeah, I could go back to what I was doing before. I was doing IT, and I was miserable.
Yep.
And do I want to do it again? No, but if I had to, yeah, I'll do it. It paid
Yeah.
good. It paid fucking phenomenal.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it wouldn't
Like,
be too big of an issue. That's another thing people do too is they assume because you are a content creator, you must be a very wealthy content creator. It's like what other industry does that work? It's like that doesn't make sense in any other sense. It's like, oh yeah, I work at a restaurant. It's like, oh, I went to a New York restaurant once. It's $500 a plate. You must get paid well. It's like that's not how anything works at all. Yeah, I mean, most of us content creators, we make as much money as just an average middle class income that most people would make. We just do it in front of a computer. We don't have to
Yeah.
clock in. That's really the only difference. I mean, some people do get successful. I'm really lucky in the position that I'm in. I lucked into the area that I live in is very expensive to live in, and I lucked into a house, like an actual house where we pay. I mean, the amount comparatively speaking to the rest of the area around us is just insane. And it's
Mhm.
like it's a small place. It's not like we're living, crazy over here. But because I have sort of a less of a need to like set aside, $2,000 a month or something like that for rent, I'm able to just do YouTube full time. If I lived in a regular place where I had to pay $1,700 a month for like a 2 bedroom or whatever, yeah, like I would content creation would literally be a part-time job for me. I would make as much as some guy makes parking cars on the side. That's how all this works though. It's like any other job. There's some people who make more money than you. And maybe it's maybe they don't deserve that. There's plenty of jobs where some guy above you doesn't do as much work as you do, but that's
Mhm.
content creation is just flat out a career like anyone else's.
Yeah.
Some
I
people
mean,
make
it's
money, some people don't. Some people work hard, some people don't. It's just you can't really generalize as much.
yeah. I think, and this is, I know we're wrapping up towards the end, but like one thing I've met a lot. I've doing content creating has opened a lot of opportunities for me. It's
Mhm.
opened a lot of doors, allowed me to meet a lot of people. Like, I was a fan of your content for years. And
Word.
through being a fellow content creator, reaching out to you, having you on the show,
Yeah.
we've come to become friends now. Like, it's,
Mhm.
and by proxy of through you, like I was able to meet uh, you know, um Jeff Shine, you know,
Oh, yeah.
through you.
Dude, super nice guy.
Super nice guy, incredibly nice guy. But like it's opened so many doors that
Mm,
I never would have imagined. Like, things that I was
absolutely.
told when I was a kid would be impossible. You'll never do that. Like, I've gotten to do.
Mm,
And one thing I really hate, and it gets to me because, like, I have anxiety and
mm.
depression. That a lot of people don't know. They're like, "Oh, you're always chipper." I'm like, "Yeah, that's what you see. You don't see
Yeah.
the shit I go through. Like, I deal with. Like, sometimes dealing with mental health is a real thing.
Yeah.
Um, like, I've got 12,000 subs, right?
Mhm.
And I've been doing this. Like, I've had a YouTube channel since like 2016,
Yeah.
and a lot of times I'll meet content creators. They're just chill, laid back like yourself, and they don't really care about what my sub count is.
Mhm.
And then I'll deal with others that have this complex of, oh, you only have this much, you only have that. And then it turns into my worth, not even as a creator, but like as a person, is
Mm.
tied to
Yeah.
my sub count. And I fucking hate that. Like, I'm like, yeah, I would love to have more than 12,000, but how many people
Yeah.
can say they can easily get to 12,000 subs? Like, that's not easy.
Yeah, by my experience, honestly, some of the best content on YouTube is created by people with some of the lowest sub counts. It's really crazy. I mean, most of the content I follow that isn't like news related or anything like that, because it's all niche subjects like retro upscaling, like Bob from Retro RGB or the guys over at
Hmm.
My Life in Gaming, who also comparatively small YouTube channel for the quality of work they put out. I mean, these people paid for a trip to Japan, created a documentary based on a company that ports games, like
Hmm.
that's crazy. And that's work I think needs to be done. And there's just such a small percentage of us that watch their content. So, the whole subscriber count thing, I think it's easy to get obsessed with, especially when you do content creation. But I think you get to a point where you realize that it doesn't. I mean, yeah, it's really nice seeing my subs go up. Sadly, my subs don't dictate my paycheck, so that really doesn't mean as much to me as it used to. It's like, hey, did people watch this video? Did they like it? In their comments, is there an issue with this video? And those are the things that truly matter to people who aren't, obsessed with their subscriber count. But, that's why I don't do collaborations with, like, bigger, content creators. I don't wanna feel like that guy. "Hey, you have a
Yeah.
big audience. I'd love to, like, get exposed to them." That seems like, "Hey, I'm asking you for a favor. Can I have access to your platform for a little bit?" That's just I don't know, it doesn't seem right. Now, when people come to me and they ask for, like, if I wanna do a voice part in one of their videos, I'm super happy to because 'cause I'm kind of excited to help out people who are smaller than me. But I've only ever shown up on one channel that's bigger than mine, and oh, yeah, I did a podcast with Residents of Evil, talking to JJ.
Hmm.
I think it was after Village released, I forget completely. But we were just talking Resident Evil, just shooting the shit. Um,
JJ's awesome.
he's a super nice guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I I don't like the idea of approaching people and asking them to form like a business relationship. I feel like, hey,
Yeah.
I'm a regular guy, and if I message you, it'll be like, hey, what's up? How you doing, man? I'm not trying to like be like, hey, can I borrow theoretical money from you basically by showing up on your channel? It just
Yeah.
doesn't feel right. So I'm never I don't begrudge people who do that, who approach other people for like collaboration style
Hmm.
content, because I often enjoy the product of that. I think I saw Matt McMuscles on like an Angry Video Game Nerds video, and that ruled. That was cool, but I don't necessarily think it's the way that I want to go about interacting with people. I don't know that I
Yeah.
necessarily want to interact with a lot of content creators in general, but the core few people that I know, and I know people with over 500,000 subs and people with 500 subs. And I have spent an equal amount of time in my DMs talking content creation, retro video upscaling. I mean, I'm talking to G Man Lives recently. Super nice guy. It's just
Awesome
crazy
content creator.
nice. Super cool content. And then he's messaging me, hey, like what scaler should I go with? Me and him, I got him bit by the bug and now he's all about that shit. So he's steady sending me screenshots like, yo, like look at these settings I got. And like that's super cool. I have that same conversation going on with Bitbox Gaming, and I don't know if he's broken 100 subs yet. Same conversation, So, uh,
Wow.
that kind of stuff doesn't I don't think anybody should if you come to me talking about a subject that I enjoy talking about, I'm talking to you. I do your channel. I've done other podcasts who are maybe might be approaching 300 subscribers on their YouTube channel because I enjoy talking about stuff and having fun. I just don't want it to feel like when I come to someone to talk and have fun that I'm also looking for them to make me money. So I
Yeah.
try to steer away from uh, the business aspect of YouTube because for me, this whole thing is not and this I know everybody says this. I feel like such a douchebag. This is not like my job. It's not a
Right.
money-making affair for me. The entire purpose of this is for me to express myself creatively. I enjoy video editing and I love these video games and I like thinking critically and expressing my ideas. I enjoy now. I didn't think I would like audio production, right? I
Hmm.
really get into retro video upscaling. These are all things I love to do and I put them all together and I use them in a way to sort of express what's inside of me, the things that I enjoy. So you may think that that's hard to do with a video game review, but when I write on my script, this character does this when you press this button, something pretty objective and unopinionated. I can put in footage of something taking place that sort of maybe might contradict me for like a comedic effect or may prove what I'm saying in a very exaggerated way. There's all kinds of stuff you could be creative with. And when I started realizing that, I was like, oh, This is like when I used to make music, or when I used to draw, or when I used to do whatever the hell skate, whatever it was. I used to sing in a band, right? This is what that stuff is to me. So it's amazing that I'm so lucky that I can pay my rent with this stuff, and and I can make enough money to save so that I can move to Japan. That's not a small deal. So I'm thankful for that, but I try my hardest not to treat it like a job, because then I won't enjoy it as much, and it'll stop being creative, and it'll start being, I got to clock in, get this video done. Thursday's coming up. I don't want it to turn into that. So I think the best way, I think if someone's thinking about approaching content creation, and of course this is going to differ depending on if you're trying to do like industry news and product reviews, you're going to have to stay up to date. You're going to have to be pretty obsessed with your numbers, versus if you want to come into a more opinion centric space in YouTube, making content, just talking about your social political beliefs, or making content about how you feel about retro video games, or opinion pieces on complex stuff like mechanics, or how games are made, stuff like that. Come into it with the idea that you're creating music, you're creating like art. That sounds so fucking lame. Um, but you really are. You're creating art in a way, and if you are doing that, do you want it to be art that you have made that people can put your name on, or do you want it to be something that looks and sounds like everybody else's? Because when you start getting into numbers and you start getting really obsessed with them, that's what you'll do. Because when it comes time to get into numbers, you're going to do where the numbers are going. The numbers are going in places where everybody else is right now. So you're not exactly able to express yourself creatively while doing the thing everyone does.
And that's why, like, with because my wife, she also does content creating. I think we talked about that.
Oh, sweet. So does mine.
Right?
Twinsies.
It's like, so like during the pandemic, like the job she had, the company pulled out of Hawaii, so they just laid off like
Damn.
a couple hundred people. They laid off just like that.
That's
So
crazy.
she's already, like, at one point before doing content, like she was doing reviews of games and stuff like that, but her heart really wasn't into that because that's not really where her interest lies. And I was like,
Right.
well, why don't you just start covering stuff you like you're into anime, you're into manga, you're into arts and crafts, like start covering that. Like, don't focus on like what's trending, or this will give me views. And so she started doing that, and within a couple of months, I want to say she shifted over to doing that for the last 7 to 8 months, and she's at like almost 7,000 subs.
That's pretty fucking fast.
Like just covering stuff she enjoys. And I told her, like, just so long as you're having fun with it. Because if you're not having fun, it becomes a job. It feels like you're clocking in. Like if you're obsessed with numbers, you're obsessed with like what's the retention rate and this and that, like then you lose out there. I make all kinds of videos just because like my interests are everywhere. Like, do I want to hone in on certain things? Yeah, I'm slowly shifting there, but it's this is going to what you were saying before about art, like creative expression. And that's easy to lose sight of in this field. But like when you're able to stay in that creative sphere, and you're able to like find things like you enjoy, like aspects of this you enjoy, like that's when I talk to my family, like my family, they don't understand what the fuck I'm doing. They're like, oh, what is this? You left your IT job for this? I'm like, I love this. I fucking love this. I don't love all the people in this, but I love what I do.
Sure, yeah.
I love editing. I love, see, I don't do a script because I'm dyslexic too, and I already know I'm gonna fuck up. So I commend you for doing it, because I can't fucking do it.
That's
but
rough,
like,
dude.
But like, there's certain things like I really like. There's some projects I'm working on right now. Like, I'm really huge into like the Xeno series, like Xenogears, Xenosaga, Xenoblade, and like I'm working on a video. Like, I want to talk about the psychological aspects, like how they researched Friedrich Nietzsche and Carl Jung, and like that shit interests me. Like, I want to talk about that. And so like, like even with King of Fighters, like I want to do a timeline. I want to talk about all the different spin-offs and all where the story is going
See,
from
those
here. I
sound
want to
like
do
2 really
theories.
fucking good videos, by the way.
Right.
I'd watch the shit out of that.
Like I'm like that stuff like I'm working on, and like when I talk to my core audience, they're like, yeah, I'm not interested in it. And I'm like, well, cool. Well, hey,
Mm.
but
Yeah.
I'm gonna
I
do
mean,
it
yeah,
anyway.
and again, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, I had a conversation recently that kind of started me thinking about this a little deeper.
Mhm.
And this is a perfect analog because sometimes there are bands that change their sound around completely. And you're like, well, fuck, I really like Between the Buried and Me was like a more technical, quasi death metal band. And then they changed their sound to a more experimental, a more melodic kind of like a more techie Faith No More kind of sound almost. And
Mhm.
I thought to myself as well, on one end, they are the artists who are creating this stuff. They have an amount of creative freedom that I have to afford them. This is their stuff they're putting out. On the
Mhm.
other end, I'm a fan of the work that they used to do, and I do feel left behind by the current work. So when YouTubers start to change their content and people react negatively, I understand that. Then again, on the other side of the spectrum, like you said, I completely understand. If your heart's not in it, we could tell. Like content creators think they could just keep making stuff that they're not just fully invested in, and it won't show. It's like, no, we know when that's going on. When you become like a J Station channel, it's like there's no life behind that guy's eyes, right? So like either your viewers will either start to get tired of the soulless, heartless content you're making, or they'll start to get tired of you creating new stuff. Either way, you have to do what's good for you. I mean, if you keep, for example, I'm in the same position. I cover all kinds of horror games, and I got a crazy announcement for you. I don't play a lot of horror games. I play Resident Evil. I play survival horror. I love Silent Hill. But I mean, I mostly play fighting games and like weird Russian first person shooters and JRPGs. So, eventually I'm going to run out of survival horror games I enjoy, and I'm not going to just start covering horror in general just because that's what people want to see. I want to give the people who watch my content what they want to see, but more than that, I want to be able to fulfill myself creatively. And if I get tired of creating this stuff, I will stop immediately. I'll start doing something else. And the people who are upset at me, I will understand, and I think they'll probably have a good reason to be. But, people like you and me, we got to do what's good for us and not necessarily what's good for everyone around us. Like it's good to worry about your viewership to a degree because you do want to listen to their input when you're not doing things that they like and you're willing to do those things. But when it
Mhm.
comes time for you to be happy and to be satisfied and fulfilled, that's got to take precedence. And they're going to be people who don't like that. If I transition into some other type of content, people who came around for the survival horror stuff, the Resident Evil retrospectives and Dino Crisis, understandably aren't going to enjoy that. And that's totally fine. If they choose to leave, I have no ill will towards them whatsoever. But, it's got to be done, which is not saying I'm going to do that, by the way. But eventually I probably will run out of horror games to cover that I enjoy. And it's going to go back to just
Wise.
generic stuff.
You're gonna start covering J-pop. We know K-pop.
Listen, I'm not saying that that's not going to happen. I do have a pretty extensive J-pop library that I like to listen to. So that's not outside of the realm of possibility.
Oh man, yo. So is there anything in wrapping up this podcast? Is there anything you want to leave the audience with before you go? Anything you're working on? You want to talk about? Go ahead, plug yourself, and floor is
Yeah.
yours.
Okay, so that's actually I've been thinking recently about something I don't think people do enough. Uh, every once in a while, I will get a DM from on Twitter or a comment on YouTube of people saying like, "Hey, I've been watching your stuff for years. I just wanted to let you know that I enjoy your content." If you are a fan of someone's content and you think that they're available to get in touch with, like if they, if you can at them on Twitter, if you can comment on the YouTube videos, do it. I found out that I don't leave a lot of comments on content that I enjoy, and I don't know. I never knew why, but I enjoy so much when people leave comments on my stuff, telling me that they enjoyed it, or hey, did you know that there's a weird obscure port of this game here? Like I've learned so much about the stuff that I've researched after I put the
Mm-hmm.
product out when people leave comments. And not on top of that, just in a very selfish way. It's very nice to have really cool feedback, positive feedback, or even constructive criticism. Or sometimes someone's so much of an ass, it's awesome. Like you genuinely have fun with reading their comment about what an idiot you are and how you hate that they hate your channel and stuff. So I get a lot of like stuff for me out of that comment section. And I realized I'm not giving a lot of that to other content creators that I enjoy who may feel that same way. You know, I get that DM every once in a while, people saying, I just wanted to let you know that your content was really fun. I liked watching it. A guy messaged me recently, said I helped him through a hard time. And, you know, obviously I don't go into making content specifically to help people through hard times, although that's fucking incredible. That's the coolest thing you could say to somebody is the creative output that you've given them makes them feel better. It's like, holy shit, that's a big deal. And if you feel that way about a content creator, not necessarily me, but if you watch a content creator and just consume their content uh, sort of like anonymously, like I've done for years and years, maybe think about that content creator might want to hear about what you have to say, compliments, constructive criticism, whatever. Just kind of let them know how you feel, because I was thinking about that recently and I don't think enough people do it.
Where can people find you?
They can find me on YouTube, Avalanche Reviews, and on Twitter at Avalanche Jared, Jared. I will warn you though that the Twitter is just mostly I ramble on Twitter. It has nothing to do with my channel. You know, when a video comes out, I'll be like, "Hey guys, new video." But for the most part, it's like, "Hey, I've been learning how to skate again. Here's the music video I was in," or whatever. You know,
AKA Sharp Pixels.
that's me. Yeah,
Okay.
that's another thing too. Is like you'll watch my videos and be like, "Oh, okay, so I have an idea of how this guy is," and then you see me on Twitter, it's just nothing but upscaling stuff.
Oh man, dude! Thank you again so much for coming on the show. Like
Absolutely, man.
I know things a lot's been going on for you.
Yeah,
Like I said, I'm always here if you ever need to talk.
I appreciate it.
Um, you know, and plus, big things coming up. The move,
Yeah,
excited for
man.
you. Get your
Oh,
ass out here
you
to
know what?
Hawaii,
I'm almost at 100,000 subscribers. I'm almost there, man.
dude.
Pretty soon I'll be too big to talk
Congrats.
to you. I'm gonna have to stop.
I know, right? Be like, who is this fucking peon? Oh man, but dude, it's always a pleasure having you on,
Yeah,
and
thank you, man.
dude, I can't thank you enough for going from being a fan of your work to being a friend of yours. Like, it, talking to you, talking to the folks over at Row, JJ, Tony, all those guys, a couple other content creators. It reminds me of why I enjoy doing this, why I enjoy doing the podcast, just being able to
Yeah.
talk and shoot the shit with someone and
Mhm.
not, feel like, oh, I'm marketing. Let me, like what you say earlier, like a lot of people, a lot of experiences I've had with content creators, hell, even people in the industry, when they come on the show, it's this idea of, oh, so you're number one in Hawaii with your podcast, so you can get me
Mm.
more followers, more viewers,
Yeah.
more buys. And I'm like, it's not about that. Like, this podcast is that's my
Mhm.
passion. I like talking to people. I'm still an introvert, but I was a really bad introvert. And what I've
Yeah.
come to learn is I love interacting, talking to people, learning people's stories, their
Oh,
walks
yeah.
in life. And
Mhm.
so this is my vehicle for that. So I appreciate you, giving me the opportunities to have you on the show and, pick your brain and shoot the shit because, we need more opinionated motherfuckers out there like you.
Man, I'm happy to do it. You can call me back. I'll be back in here anytime, dude.
Definitely. So with that being said, people, this we're wrapping up the show. If you enjoyed it, make sure you if you're watching this on YouTube, leave a comment, let us know what your favorite aspect was. Make sure you go and follow Jared on his social media outlets. If you are interested in retro thinking, hey, he is who you're going to talk to about that. If you're interested in any of his content, links for everything will be on the description below. You stream, actually, let me go back, because you don't stream on Twitch anymore. You
Oh,
stream
yeah. All YouTube,
exclusively on
yeah.
YouTube. Yeah.
Absolutely.
How, actually, I guess that's the last question. How has that been? Has it been a better experience for you?
Really fun. I like it a lot. It's more fun than Twitch, I think. I don't agree with a lot of the stuff Twitch does, but realistically, if you had to ask me why I don't stream on there, I don't like the look of the platform, and I don't enjoy the fact that uh, just the way it's set up as far as discoverability. I just think it's almost impossible at this point,
Yeah.
you know. Whereas with YouTube, if you look up a certain subject or something like that and filter by streams or live streams, whatever, I feel like it's a lot easier to just come across someone new. And I don't know, I feel that that's nice for me. And I like the layout. I enjoy the process. I like it's familiar. Everybody uses YouTube. They see the
Hmm.
chat there. It looks like a YouTube video. Something about that's good. But I will say that it is better for me than it was when I first started streaming back around the release of Resident Evil 2 Remake. When I
Hmm.
first got into it, because I had never streamed in my life. I did my first stream ever when that game was released. And I went from, I think it was, somewhere in the neighborhood of like 2,000 subscribers a month growth to around about 200 in 4 days. It just immediately destroyed my growth in the algorithm. Uh,
Hmm.
and I was like, "What the hell? That's insane! I've never seen it." The whole time I've been doing YouTube, I've never seen a drop like that before. And I started looking it up, and people started saying when you stream on YouTube, it diminishes traffic to your that associated channel that has other content on it because it sees these 4-hour videos that only has 1,000 views, and they assume, oh well, people aren't engaging with this content as much. And there's a lot of back and forth where people saying, "Oh, well, that's not true." And I can tell you without a doubt it happened to me, and it was at a time when my content was doing very, very well, and I had not
Hmm.
released any new stuff that would have like scared off a majority of my subscriber base. So
Hmm.
I was real paranoid about that. I set up the Twitch account specifically for that reason, and it was fun streaming on Twitch. Sadly, there are people on Twitch that never made the jump back over to YouTube, and they were really cool people I enjoyed talking to. So that sucks, but I got to do what's good for me. So I'm streaming on YouTube, but I'm streaming on a secondary channel because I was paranoid of killing my main form of income again. So then I accidentally went to check a comment before I hit the live stream button on my main
Hmm.
channel, and it kept my live stream, the pre-stream like screen you have, it kept
Hmm.
that there. So I hit stream and I just started doing my thing, whatever. And everybody kept asking me, "Oh, you stream on this channel now?" And I was like, "Oh shit, I've doomed myself." Um, but they've changed it now, and I think how it is now, they actually favor live streams. They kinda drives more traffic to your channel, which is dope, but, I found that if you unlist your VOD so that people can find it, I put it in a playlist so people can have access to it, but it's not available for everyone who subscribes to me. I'm not cluttering their sub screen with those videos and stuff.
Hmm.
It's been nothing but good news, honestly. So if you're thinking about trying the YouTube streaming thing, I'd say give it a shot. Even in a situation like mine, where it was my full time income and I could have ruined it, it ended up working out, and I think it's a net benefit.
I think also to add to that, I think is because YouTube now is focusing very heavily on
Yeah,
streaming
so that
at
helps
this
for
point,
sure.
and they've been pulling so many people, so many big streamers from Twitch. Twitch has been fucking up. Let's just say that, like they've been
Yeah,
fucking up, and it's
business
still
wise, like PR wise, everything.
and like especially like taking 50% of your pay,
Hmm.
like just yeah, their model isn't working. It's very archaic, and
Yeah.
YouTube is providing a better opportunity. Like there's no discoverability, like you said on Twitch.
Hmm.
There is none. I was streaming on Twitch for a year and a half, and like you, like I had streamed. I was getting really good growth on YouTube, and then I started
Hmm.
streaming on there, and they killed my channel to an
Yeah.
extent. So that's why I went to Twitch, and Twitch. It just never took off. And all
Yep.
these YouTube channels, it'd be like, oh, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to get in this community and do that. I'm like, I don't want to do all that shit. I just want to
Hmm.
do what I do. And so like
Yeah.
going come I like I've done 2 streams on YouTube within the last 2 weeks, and I've gotten better traffic, better views,
Yeah.
more people watching, and it doesn't feel like I'm being penalized. So yeah, I mean, if
Yeah.
anyone wants to consider it, yeah, try it out.
Yeah, YouTube streaming is definitely really cool. I have not lucked into getting one of those hate rage yet. Fingers crossed. I might stream tonight, so maybe we can get one going. Uh, Other than that, though, yeah, no, I haven't had any issues whatsoever with stream. Not on the back end as far as like numbers go, and not on the front end as far as just talking to people in your chat, hanging out, and having a good time. Very chill environment. I've found.
So, all right, I took up enough of your time. That being said, people, make sure you go and follow Jared on all his social media outlets. Make sure you follow him on Twitter, on YouTube. Do you have Instagram? Do you use
I
Instagram?
did for a while, but it was literally just pictures of my cats and when I bought new video games, so I stopped using it.
Oh man. So all that being said, thank y'all for coming through. Jared, thank you again for coming on the show. And yeah, if you like it, share it with someone who might enjoy it. If you really love it, sub. If you want to support, we got merch. We got Teespring. Have you put anything on TeePublic? TeePublic's really good.
I've been using it lately. I just got a new design, a really nice guy made for me concerning the onimusha stuff. So, oh yeah, I should probably pub
Nice.
that Avalanche
Go ahead.
Reviews on TeePublic. It's good. I mean, the point of my merch was to not look like YouTuber merch. I just wanted it. So I have a design of my logo that looks like a thrash metal band, like Municipal Waste or something like that. It's cool looking shit, if you ask me. So if you like cool looking shit, you don't necessarily like YouTube merch, you might like it.
Yeah. And plus their payouts are much better than Teespring. Like Teespring,
I have money in it and I just keep forgetting to do the payout thing. So I don't know how much I have.
Have you, like, with Teespring, like I had people that would buy merch and they'd be like, oh yeah, like it doesn't show up for like a month and a half. But like since I
Really?
switched over to TeePublic, a lot of people are like, yeah, I get it within a week and a half. So
Oh damn, okay. Fuck.
yeah. But anyway, that being said, we'll catch y'all on the next one. Y'all be easy. Shaka. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. I hope it was informative, engaging, and you enjoyed it. And if you did, make sure you go ahead and leave a rating and a review. It greatly helps out the podcast and helps the platforms that we're on go ahead and promote us more so that more people can check it out. And if you're wondering what all platforms we're on, aside from what you've listened to it on, we're available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, Pandora, Spotify, Amazon Music, and more. And if you want to support the podcast, then we've got Patreon, so patreon.com/Mikhail Kasanova, which allows us to continue doing what we're doing. If you're looking for this in video format, we're also available on twitch.tv/Mikhail Kasanova, as well as youtube.com/Mikhail Kasanova. So with all that being said, I'll catch you on the next episode of Hawaii's #1 podcast and the #1 podcast in the Pacific, the Kasanova Podcast. You have a great day, and I'll see you on the next one.